Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's Thrive in China Roundtable, where we are going to be talking about how to write your business plan for China. Before we start today's webinar, today's roundtable, I just want to explain how the roundtable actually works. We're here to educate you. So the theme of today is around business plans for China. And we're going to give you some tips in regards to how to draft your business plan, what you need to consider inside of it, and how business plans for China might differentiate themselves from other business plans that you would create as you're expanding globally. This is your time spent for the next 60 minutes, so use them wisely. I'm hoping to only run the presentation for about 30 to 40 minutes so that there is time for Q&A. And you have the chat box to ask all the questions that you want. Remember, there's no dumb question when it comes to China. From a technical standpoint, we're using Zoom meetings. If you run into any issues or technical difficulties, my recommendation is to sign off, sign back in, and I will do the same if anything were to happen to me. I will be coming back on. It usually takes about 1 to 2 minutes for me to reboot the system. And I will be coming back on to finish the presentation. For those of you that are watching this on replay, welcome. Again, if you've got any questions after having watched this, don't hesitate to reach out. Happy to have a one-to-one, or you can email me as well. So the China expert for this week is myself. My name is Kristina Koehler-Coluccia. I'm the head of business advisory at Woodburn Accountants and Advisors. And I have over 17 years of on-the-ground corporate compliance and corporate service experience in China as well as in Hong Kong. We've helped over 500 companies with their market entry strategies, with their business model creations, as well as then with the execution of those business models, and then ultimately helping clients to focus on scaling up and growing in the Chinese market. Our services entail everything from trademark registrations to employer of record services and corporations in China, the outsourcing of tax, payroll, accounting functions, recruitment of finance people that you may want to hire in-house, as well as the appointment of supervisors, non-executive directors, finance managers. And we're also offering now for cross-border e-commerce a new mentorship program where we help you to build up your strategy and build up your business model for cross-border e-commerce, including introducing you to the network of providers that are available in China. So if you're interested in any of these services, again, don't hesitate to reach out. Just remember that I've got this great book and I've been having great feedback on it, on the 10 biggest mistakes companies make in China. This book is really geared to those of you that are starting off in the Chinese market, those of you that have already been doing business in China for a number of years, those of you that are on the ground in China, that just want to have a refresher on mistakes that we make, the common obstacles, roadblocks that pop up. And as leaders, sometimes how we get ourselves in a mess and don't know how to get ourselves out of them when it occurs. If you're interested to get a free copy, you can just email me at Kristina@woodburnglobal.com. So the topic for today is how to write a business plan for China. And of course, this becomes an administrative function, right? It's either creating and opening up a Word document, or it's creating a PowerPoint presentation for your China strategy, right? And I've had a lot of people come to me saying, Kristina, can you not just write it for us? Every single business plan will be unique to your company, to what your objectives and goals are, to how you want to enter in phase 1, how you want to expand in phase 2, and how you want to scale up in phase 3. Everybody is going to have a different way of doing it because there will be differences in human resources, in time resources, and also in financial resources. So there's no one China strategy that fits everybody. It's something that is unique to your business and something that's going to be your guide in how to develop your China strategy. Don't forget that business plans are there not only to act as a guide for you, but also ultimately to convince your partners managing directors, board of directors, investors on what you're doing in China and whether what you have planned is actually coming out in reality, right? So don't forget that you have to go into detail in this business plan to also convince your superiors that this is a good idea to expand into China. So why is it important to create a business plan for China? Let's just go back to the basics of why it's so important to create a business plan to begin with, but particularly for China. Now, a business plan is a tool, okay? It is something, again, that is written, that is your guide, that is your budget, that allows you to understand in which direction you're going to move into the Chinese market, and potentially how you may have to pivot the business based on circumstances like the current Shanghai lockdowns, where you have to think outside of the box to pivot your business and think about other forms of revenue, right? It's your scenario planning for China. So a business plan is this tool for managing and growing your business. It lays out your vision of growth. It is what is going to convince investors, managing directors, board of directors, also employees on what you plan on doing into China. And the business plan is what will also attract your financing. So it will also tell people, this is the money we need to execute this plan, right? So the business plan for me encompasses the strategy and then the budget that is joined together with that strategy, okay? Again, it's your guide for getting into China. Now, the business plan should clarify the direction you want to go into. You know, is your direction cross-border e-commerce? And that's phase one, meaning we don't have an entity in China. We're just collaborating with third parties that are going to help us to push up this cross-border e-commerce model. Or is the direction that you're going to use distributors on the ground that are going to not only handle the cross-border e-commerce, but also the domestic sales? Does that then mean you have to do product registrations and other things to get set up, right? You have to have clarity in that direction. And of course, clarity can only come with the ecosystem you've built up and the people that you have been talking to that potentially you might be signing contracts with to get you in the right direction, okay? How to get clarity on the direction is to really talk to as many people as possible, not just the third-party providers. I would also talk to the references of those 30 third-party providers so that you have an understanding from companies that are in a similar space as you, how they've done it. And potentially they might even give you advice of how you shouldn't do it or what mistakes they incurred. It's also just talking to people in general on companies, meaning that might not even be in the same space as you, on what they've done to get into China, okay? So the clarity in the direction will really come into who you've spoken to, and that should be added into your business plan, i.e. who have you spoken to? Have you spoken to associations? Have you spoken to companies? Have you spoken to third-party providers, etc.? The next is the future vision, right? It is setting targets, goals, and objectives that can be revenue related, volume of product related, etc. The business plan is also going to help attract, and then obviously the business plan is your guide telling you month by month, week by week, day by day, whether you're hitting those goals and objectives, okay? The business plan is also there to attract and secure financing. If you have to go to your board of directors about your China strategy and convince them on a certain budget, that business plan has to be rock solid for you to be able to say, I need $1 million US, I need €1 million in order to be able to get into China, and I'm going to spend the money on X, Y, and Z, and you've got clarity in what you're spending it on. And it's also important to know, how much money do you need today? How much money do you need in 6 months? How much money would you need in a year? Again, because it's not just about the short-term function of getting into the market, it's also about the long-term strategy that you want to develop and how you're going to scale up. You need financing to be able to scale up. The business plan is also there to attract team members. Okay, now what I mean by this is that China is no longer a market where the employees are convincing you of their skill set and capabilities. Nowadays, interviews are you, the company, convincing them why they should join you. Okay, and if you don't have or you do not present a business plan or a budget that is attracting team members to join your China business, it's not interesting. Now, it's not just team members. There are also third parties out there, and I've had this on discussions with several TPs on behalf of clients I've worked with, where even TPs for cross-border e-commerce are selective on who they will choose as clients based on how long have they been in China? Have they already started selling in China? Do they have history in China? And they will look at all of this. So if your business plan is not already created, trying to attract providers, but then also trying to attract team members, you will not acquire anybody within your ecosystem. The business plan is vital for that. And if in a meeting, and I can honestly say this, if in a meeting you are not clear on the vision of the company, the direction it's going into, and the financing that's going to back it up, you will not attract employees, and most likely you won't attract distributors or TPs to join you. All right, because for them, they'll say, you know, get clearer. We're not interested until you get clearer. The business plan is also there for you if you are a China leader to manage the company. Now, that could mean managing the China business from your HQ, i.e. having a separate P&L for China, having a separate business plan for China, but you're sitting in your HQ, or literally managing the Chinese company, the Chinese subsidiary. Okay, that business plan is there as a guide, as a tool to help you understand, again, which direction, what's the future vision. It's there to also maintain focus. Now, for me, I have my budget that I look at on a daily basis. I get numbers on a weekly basis that look at that budget, and they give me focus on what, for me, I'm a service company, what service line items I need to focus on more. They give me focus on cutting costs. General administration expenses, do we have to do anything there? Do we have to up our marketing? Do we have to down our marketing? And these numbers are making me focus on a daily, if not weekly basis on how to pivot, change, and move direction within the company. China is extremely fast-paced, all right? So you need to understand for every marketing initiative that you're doing, what is the return on investment? Are you ever gonna do that again? For every headcount that you have, is that person working to its fullest potential, or actually, are they dragging you down? Are they the weakest chain in the link? Are they weak? No, I said that wrong. Are they the weakest link in the chain, causing you to wonder, do you have to get rid of them and find a replacement, right? Your focus as a leader should be on how, on a daily basis, you are improving your organization to make it more efficient. There's an expression in Japanese called kaizen, which is continuous improvement. You have to think about continuously improving and focusing on that. And then it's fueling ambitions. I mean, right now, I can tell you from my own perspective, the Shanghai lockdowns have completely changed how my budget looks like, how my business plan looks like for 2022. Okay. Is it fueling my ambition? Absolutely. It's fueling me to make sure that in the second half of the year, once this lockdown is over, we are kicking up gear and we are actually getting ahead of the line and getting ahead of the competitors. But it has also meant that I've had to pivot. I've had to pivot the direction in which we do marketing. I've had to also think about salary increases and salary raises because I'm thinking and focusing on cash flow. We've got no transparency over bank accounts right now because nobody's working at the banks. And everything is so old-fashioned in the banking system. So it's fueling ambition, but it's also giving me insight that when these sudden things occur, like COVID-19 in 2020, or these current Shanghai lockdowns that are occurring right now since end of March, that you have to pivot. And it's not just waiting for the financial management report that the 20th day of the following month. It's making decisions straight away and getting clarity through your business plan and asking for certain numbers that you can do that. So the business plan for me is essential, and it has become more and more essential under COVID times, that you've got something concrete in place and that you can take this document with your budget and tell employees, we have to pivot, we have to change, we have to move. Going to investors saying, we're pivoting, we're changing, and this is how. So for those that always approach me to draft their business plans, I just want to highlight for you what should be included in your business plan. These are chapters, okay? I don't offer slides to people, so if you do want to take a snapshot of this, please go ahead and do that. But basically, you're starting off your business plan with an executive summary, a snapshot of your business in China. What do you want to achieve? And it really should just be your elevator pitch, right? In terms of why you're going, what you're going to achieve. Then you got a company description. And remember, when I say this is a business plan for China, everything here has to relate to your China business, not to your HQ. You're not writing a business plan for your HQ. And I've read a lot of business plans where it's been so geared towards what the HQ does and not what China's going to be doing, okay? Remember, you're a startup in China. You're brand new. Doesn't matter what the history is, all right? So the company description, you can have one sentence about what the HQ does and how long it's been established. But ultimately, you've got to say, in China, we're a startup, we're new, right? What are we going to achieve? What are we doing? Is it that initially in phase one, we're only selling 2 products from our whole portfolio of products? What are you actually going to do? Market analysis. You cannot convince anybody on your financing goals if you don't have data. If you haven't researched your industry, your market, your competitors, if you haven't done price point checking, if you haven't looked at brand awareness, all of these aspects need to be in your market analysis. Data is what is going to be the main point of discussion when you talk to the board of directors. And if you are missing certain pieces of the data, then this is something you have to gather and get. I call it data mining. If you're doing cross-border e-commerce, you can do your data mining through the e-commerce platforms, and a lot of TPs provide this service. If you're looking for general market research, then again, there are market research providers that are out there that can do focus groups, interviews, and whatnot to give you that data. Organization and management. This is basically creating your corporate structure, right? Who's the China leader? Who's underneath them? And how is the organogram going to look like now and in the future, right? You've got to think about how you're going to operate this business, whether you're going to have a subsidiary on the ground or whether you're going to do it from your HQ. Who is going to be involved in this, right? And obviously, if you're organizing this operation from HQ, you will need external parties in HQ to support this business. So who from the finance team is going to help you from the finance aspect for China? Who from supply chain is going to help you? Those people should be included into this organogram. So you can also show the investors what is the human resource requirement to really pull this off. Service or product offerings is critical because I don't believe you're going to go into China on day one selling your entire portfolio of products. If you've got 1,000 SKUs, I wouldn't advise you to sell all those SKUs from day one. That's a lot of work. You might want to pick from your analysis 1 or 2 products to start off and to then push forward in China. Same with services, all right? Marketing and sales. Marketing is fundamental. If you've done your research on the market analysis and you understand what brand awareness is in China for your brand, that marketing is going to kick everything up, and that will be the fundamental aspect to your finance budget, all right? How much do you need to really pull this off from HQ? How much capital do you need to initiate marketing campaigns, to hire KOLs? Okay, do not underestimate that. Obviously, there's no magic number, But the more that you invest in marketing, the more traction you're going to gain and probably will have a faster return on investment versus if you've got a much smaller budget. And you have to account for that in this business plan. And maybe even develop scenarios. If you say, I've got a marketing budget of 20,000 euros for year one, what could that generate as a return on investment? Compare it to then if you've had a marketing budget of 50,000, of 100,000, of 500,000, right? Be interesting for the investors to analyze that when you're then asking for the financing. Sales, what sales channels are you going to be investigating and using? Will it be cross-border e-commerce, or will you hire distributors on the ground? Will you have to do product registrations in order to sell domestically, depending on the product that you have? Are you just going to have one distributor, or will you have multiple distributors? And are you going to make that decision based on geographic region or based on product expertise? I don't know. This is something that whole has to come under the market analysis and by talking to as many people as possible. Funding request, that is the funding request and the financial projections are your budget, right? How much money you'll need for the next 3 to 5 years for the startup phase of your China business. You're going to have to supply forecasts, budgets, balance sheets, P&Ls, all of that. And again, you're going to need somebody probably from your finance team to support you on developing this. My recommendation with funding requests and financial projections is try and get that validated by accounting advisors in China, because there are a lot of things that you might not account for. Tax liabilities or social insurance implications, which can only be justified depending on where you actually establish your business and the types of employees where those types of employees are actually based. There might be differences based on if some suppliers are overseas and not in China, and how do you pay them then from China, and what are the tax implications on that? So try and get your funding requests and your financial projections validated by people on the ground that have this experience before you go start talking to investors. Because again, you want to be able to answer as many questions as possible when you've got these board meetings going on. And in the appendix, don't forget to add in who you've met, who you've spoken to. You might want to add their resumes or actually their LinkedIn profiles. You might want to explain the types of permits that you're going to need to pull this off. What will you need in phase 1 of growth, phase 2, phase 3, etc. You might also want to do an analysis on salaries. You can find salary guides for China on the internet through HR providers free of charge. And that will give you, they usually do these analyses every quarter period. So you can find out, for example, if you're looking to hire a marketing manager, what would be the cost of that person currently on average in the tier 1 cities. So add these into the appendices so that, and also add all of your market research in the appendices so you can actually see what collateral you have in terms of information. And again, whether you do this in Word, whether you create a PowerPoint presentation, is totally up to you. But this for me are your chapters. And obviously you might add in more chapters to break it up a little bit so that it's not so heavy. Now, remember that business planning is most effective when it's an ongoing process, i.e., and I see this a lot with entrepreneurs, where they create their business plan, they've gotten the funding, it's fantastic, and then they put this business plan in a drawer and they never look at it again. No, business plans are something that are your tool and your guide that have to be updated whenever, actually on a weekly or monthly basis, depending on the financial results, depending on if a strategy isn't working, like a marketing campaign or a sales channel. Remember, the business plan is there. The business plan and budget is there so that you can react quickly when necessary and that you can update it to then be able to give insight into to the investors, board of directors, or whoever you're reporting to. Now, if you react quickly, And this is why I'm telling you it's so important to consider this as a tool. If you react quickly, then you can amend, add, and remove chapters, clauses within the business plan. Or you may keep everything and just create then a version 2, version 3 of your business, right? Why do I say that? It's because, and I'm going to go through these points because I find them so invaluable. You have to outline the changes that you want to make to your business. So under Shanghai lockdowns right now, what have we done to change our business? What are the potential changes to your market? How is this Shanghai lockdown affecting my competitors? How is it affecting my customers? Am I generating it in new business? If not, why not? What is the psychology behind that? And how is that going to change over time? There's a war right now between Russia and Ukraine. How is this affecting our China business? Does it mean that we're going to now start trading with our China business to Russia or not? Or is it giving hesitation to the board of directors to say, oh my God, there's a war, let's slow down with China? Your objectives and goals were set at the beginning, and they will always change based on the actual status of the company in China. Again, when I say status of the company, this could be the China business that's based out of the HQ or your actual subsidiary in China, okay? The objectives and goals will constantly change based on the results that are occurring in real time. So you've got to change these objectives and goals, okay? Either for the better or for the worse, right? You need to have key performance indicators, KPIs, that are periodically there so that they, the goals and objectives are broad, and you want to break those down into monthly KPIs for your team, for each individual staff, etc. And you need to look at those, right? And again, if something is falling, you've got to pivot your business plan in another direction. If there are any issues or problems, like you've got no visibility over your bank account, or whoops, you're not getting any revenue because no overseas payments can come in and you're stuck, these are literal problems. So then you have to start thinking about developing cash flow forecasts. How long can we survive in situations like this? Now, COVID and the current lockdowns are unprecedented, okay? This is not normal. This is something I've not experienced in my last 18 years of dealing with my own Shanghai business, all right? So everybody is going through this, right? Nobody has ever had 1 month of zero revenue because you cannot distribute products, because transportation has stopped, because highways are shut down. I mean, it is insane, guys, right? These are real problems. So the question is, do we have enough cash sitting in our account for the China business where we can pay staff, where we can pay third parties, because that work might still be continuing? Do we have to allocate certain safe funds and then have delays on paying people, etc.? And then you may have to have operational changes, i.e., do you cut staff? Do you cut headcount? Not really the most opportune time to do that now, but again, these are unprecedented times. So do you need to cut headcount, or do you need to cut salaries? And obviously, in all of this, you also have to then look at government changes where they may say you've got VAT tax incentives for the lockdown period. You may have special rights depending on what industry you're in or sector that you're in, etc. Information about the management and people is also critical. I remember we had one client where they had a turnover of the management. I believe in a year they had 5 people turnover. It was absolutely incredible. Again, unprecedented times, but it does happen. So how do you pivot when you don't have management? Right? How do you pivot your organization if you don't have the key decision makers sitting there? All right. Your current financial performance and forecasts are also critical to amend your business plan. And so it is really important operationally to make sure that you are getting weekly figures and data from your finance team about sales, about bank balances, whatever you want to receive, right? About accounts receivables that are aging, etc. Okay, so it's really, really important that you pivot accordingly on this. Now, how to create a business plan for your China business? What should you actually consider? And here are 7 tips. of what you should do before you put pen to paper. One is research, and I can't emphasize this more. Research, research, research. You need to talk to people who are on the ground. So when I say talking to people, this is people who are going to be in your ecosystem. I always tell people you need to have an ecosystem of individuals that are going to help you to start up your business and help you to then eventually scale your business. Those can be third parties like lawyers, accountants, headhunters, media agencies, logistics providers, TPs, if it's cross-border e-commerce or e-commerce, distributors, government agencies, chambers of commerce, etc. The more people you can talk to, the more insight you will get into doing business in China. Don't forget to talk to market research companies in terms of the services they can offer you in terms of data mining and getting data about the potential that is in the Chinese market. Don't forget to talk to client references to understand what their experience has been in China, right? What have they experienced? What mistakes have they done, okay? You've got to determine the purpose of your plan. Why are you having this business plan? So some people actually create several business plans. One that is shown to the investors, that probably is the most detailed. One that is shown to employees. And then one is for you as your guide that you work with on a daily basis to give you that checklist of what to look at in order to be able to make decisions and pivot. Okay? But understand what that purpose is. Understand what each of the purposes of those plans are and make sure you're consistently updating them. Create a company profile for your China business, not for your HQ. Okay, your China business. I'll give you an example at Woodburn. We offer many more services than Hong Kong due to the flexibility of the government to offer these types of services. So our company profile in Hong Kong, based on what we do, is very different than China. Okay. In general, we are a corporate services firm, but we can do more in Hong Kong than we can in China. So our company profile in that regard will just be different. So remember, create a company profile that is specific to China. Document all aspects of your business. So what I would recommend you to do is take and I'll just use an example as long as I don't have client names on here, but I can use this as an example. So this is a supply chain diagram that I create pen on paper for clients. All right. It is looking at, and I'm going to use the example of selling into China. It's looking at your suppliers overseas. It's looking at your subsidiary in China if you've got it, or your third parties that you're going to outsource to, and it's going to look at your clients. Detail the actual trade flow. Detail the cash flow. Understand what is happening. Detail the goods flow. Understand what is going to happen in each stage of your business. All right. Document all aspects of your business, i.e., look at the entire supply chain and understand how this is going to affect you operationally. The easiest way for me to do that, I'm a visual person, is draw it out on a piece of paper. This is what it's going to look like. And then draw out, should there be any exceptions to that rule? Because you may have picky clients who don't want to work like that, etc. The key is making sure that you create a standardized supply chain, not creating 5 different ones based on client preferences. You're going to drive yourselves insane. So really look at it, put pen to paper, analyze. What do you need from your business? Now, this is just the supply chain. Then you have to think, okay, how am I going to find my clients? What type of marketing do we need to do? Right? Think about sales channels. You may have to create a different flow chart depending if it's cross-border e-commerce, if it's domestic e-commerce, if it's selling to distributors, if it's having your own subsidiary. Okay. That obviously leads me to the strategic marketing plan, right? How are you going to obtain clients? Are you going to build brand awareness? Make it adaptable, and strategic marketing plan really for this, talk to as many PR agencies and media agencies. You will get completely confused because you might get different opinions from everybody on what they would recommend to do. And again, at that point, you need to talk to references to see what the success has been from these marketing plans that these companies have been generating. Make your business adaptable based on your audience. So like I said, on number 2, determining the purpose of your plan, you may want to create a variety of different business plans, one for your employees, one for yourself, one for the investors. You got to make it adaptable, and you've also got to release what information you want to release because some of it might be confidential to them. Okay. And I cannot emphasize more. Why do you care? Why do you have the ambition? People love to work with me because I am passionate about China. I really love this market. I find it exciting. Not right now under the Shanghai lockdowns, but I do find it an extremely exciting market to be in. I love the energy level. I love that anything is possible. I hate the bureaucracy. That I cannot stand, but who can stand that? But when you are passionate about something and you're excited about something, that is going to be transmitted through your business plan. Okay? You've got to have that passion. You've got to have that ambition. Why do you care for this project so much? Why do you care about expanding? Right? Is it that big number that you are visioning for the future? Okay? For me, why do I love it? I love it because I love the people I meet. I love the ecosystem that I'm developing. I love the network that I have. I find it fascinating to talk to people who are like-minded in their mindset, and that they have the same thinking of me that anything is possible. Now, I just wanted to give you an example, right? So as part of the chapters, there was one chapter on organization and management. And I just wanted to give you an insight of how this would look different for your China business plan, okay? And give you a concrete example. So obviously you need to develop your structural plan. So probably you would have to tell investors what types of structures are available, what type of business models can be created, what type of company do I need? Are we going to create a subsidiary in China or not? Or are we going to use third parties that we're going to outsource to, okay? In that structural plan, you're going to have to talk about the liability. What are the liabilities for the investor based on each of these types of business models that are available? You're going to have to look at flexibility. What do these business models that are available, what flexibility are you going to have to be able to pivot at a moment's notice? There are some that you cannot pivot. What is the marketability of that structure? How are your clients going to perceive you by choosing those structural plans, those structural business models? Okay. Now, if you decide that for your structural plan, you're going to actually set up a subsidiary in China, then you really need to go into the nitty-gritties of what that means to have that subsidiary in China. Okay. So you're going to have to talk about the business scope. What does it mean? Why can it not be so vague and broad? Why do you have to be specific? Because there are government limitations. You've got to explain this to the investors. You've got to educate them, right? Registered office address. What does this mean? What options are there for having a registered office address, right? Legally, it means that we have to be operational, but companies are doing it in these other ways to give more flexibility, but here are also then the cons associated with that. The name of the company, you need to have a Chinese name. So how are you actually going to decide on a Chinese name? Are you going to use a media agency to help you? Do you already have one? Are you going to use employees to help you? How are you going to develop that? You will need one. So who are you going to go to for that help? Total investment in registered capital comes down to your budget, right? You need to indicate these two figures to the government when you set up your subsidiary. So how are you going to decide on what those numbers are? Are you going to base it on your budget? And then remember that when you're in these meetings, you're going to have to justify this. So why have you chosen those numbers, right? Don't forget to always say the reason why you're doing this. Who is the shareholder going to be? Now, if you're in a large organization, this becomes a tricky point. right? Do they have a specific holding company that's utilized for all the subsidiaries globally? Are they going to set up another holding company for the China business? Is it going to be an individual who's going to set up in China directly? All right. You have to give all the options, because then the ultimate decision makers have to make a decision on that. And most likely they're going to talk to their tax advisors on what would be the most suitable, or their lawyers on what would be the most suitable. Then who's going to be the authorized signatory on behalf of the shareholder? Also a critical point, who's going to sign off on everyone? Is it somebody who's conveniently available? It's looking at the board of directors, executive director, legal rep, GM, supervisor of the China company. Who are you going to appoint in those scenarios? In your business plan, my biggest recommendation is not just choose people out of a hat. It's actually to make recommendations. You should be going with recommendations. So here's scenario 1 of how we can create the corporate management structure. Here's scenario 2, and here's scenario 3. And let me explain to you guys what's the liability of each of these rules, so that we can eliminate the fear of people holding them. Okay? Because there is fear associated with people being appointed in these roles. They want to know, what are they liable? What happens if somebody does something wrong in the business? How is this going to impact me, being that I'm listed there in the corporate management? You need to have all of this within your business plan, so that at any point in time, somebody can come and say, you can immediately answer their questions. Included in that should be potentially director's liability insurance. Have you included that in your budget? Right? Which again is a good reason to have somebody validate this for you in China. Right? Think about the director's liability insurance. Human resources. Let's look at headcount. Let's look at headcount over time. Let's look at the roles of those headcounts. Could you outsource to third parties? Would it be cheaper than having somebody in-house? Why would you want to hire somebody in-house at the beginning? What would be the reasonings? Okay. Versus actually outsourcing it to a third party. There's pros and cons to all of this, but you have to give your reasons as to why you're doing all of this. Or you're giving a pros and cons list. If we build a team in-house, these are the pros and cons. If we outsource, these are the pros and cons. Or as a recommendation, I might say we should have a marketing manager in-house doing XYZ job functions. We should have a finance person in-house to do XYZ functions. Now, again, this all may sound very similar if you're expanding to the US and whatnot. It's just, I've seen so much time wasted because people who are drafting this don't provide recommendations. They just say what's needed. You're going to save so much time if you actually create those scenarios and present that to the board or whomever, or to investors or whomever. Okay. Ongoing operational costs to maintain the business in China. What is that? Again, you're going to have to look at the budgets for that. Have you thought of every little cent that is going to be spent on this? And that's where a lot of people forget that the smaller amounts that can actually, in the end, make up quite a large portion of your budget. Business scope for me is something that I just want to emphasize on, because before you start with your business plan, you should probably understand if you can go into China or not, depending on the products and services you're selling. So understand the licenses and activities that you're going to be doing in China. Check the negative list catalog, whether it's feasible that you go into China. Choose the activities that you're going to do now, in 5 years and 10 years, so that you've got a broad business scope. All right. What I recommend doing in these scenarios is research your competitors thoroughly by investigating what business scopes they have. This can be done through the Ministry of Commerce's website. What would you need is the Chinese name of the competitor and the address of where they're located. I always find it extremely insightful to compare the content that is on the business licenses of my competitors. It gives me great insight, and this is something that you can add in your appendix of your business plan to show that you've done this type of research already. I would take a paper and write all the activities that you want to do and perform, and the products and services now in 5 years and 10 years. And obviously you want to make your scope as broad as possible that is feasible, because obviously if you need to have additional licenses like a ICP license to run an e-commerce website, or if you need to have, I'm just thinking of what else you would, or if you want to do old-fashioned retail, traditional retail, you would need the leasing agreement of the retail store, etc. So you do need to know what you can and cannot do, okay? And that all has to be within your business plan. Your business plan isn't something you can haphazardly throw in a few hours. Do your research. Like I said, the #1 tip I'm offering you is research, research, research. And I understand the difficulty in that, because you only know what you already know. So there could be so much that you're missing out and you just don't know about it, which is why I say talk to as many people as possible, because they will fill in the gaps for you so that you have complete research. Be conservative. Again, you can be extremely passionate about China and very ambitious about China, enthusiastic about China, but when the results aren't there, it can be very disappointing, like currently in the Shanghai lockdowns for many of my clients and myself. So be conservative, okay? When in doubt, it's always a good idea to be more conservative, have slack and wiggle room available in your plan and objectives, and use precedent, right? So use the fact that COVID-19 in 2020, what happened there in China? Think about Shanghai lockdowns now. Could that happen again if they continue to have this zero COVID policy? Think about the scenarios around the Russian-Ukrainian war. Think about the trade wars with the US, right? Always be conservative, because there are always obstacles that can come along the way that may be political and hence affect your business. Monitor, evaluate, and reforecast. Once you complete the business plan, the biggest mistake you can do is put it in a drawer and forget about it, okay? You've got to make sure, again, that you have these documents with you side by side, and you are monitoring it on a weekly basis, daily basis, monthly basis, okay? And if circumstances change, right? Monitor, evaluate, and reforecast. You don't wait to do that. You do it straight away to make key decisions, all right? Unfortunately, in China, you make decisions on a daily basis in relation to the business, whether it's related to working with distributors, working with third parties, whether it's your employees, whether it's pivoting sales channels, whatever it might be. There are always difficult decisions that have to be made on a daily basis. You need to be feeling good about the decisions you're making, and you need the data on hand to be able to do that. So that is the end of today's presentation on how to write your business plan for China. I would love to hear what your biggest takeaway was from today. You can just insert that into the chat box. And obviously, if there are any questions, add them into the chat box as well. How you can work with Woodburn is that we can help you validate your China market entry strategy by looking at your budgets and business plans. We do not draft them though, just want to highlight that. We offer incorporation advisory. We actually execute incorporations in China. We can do competitor business scope benchmarking. As I said, we can offer the appointments of several roles: supervisor, finance manager, non-executive director, China business mentor. We also do recruitments for in-house finance teams, and the whole outsourcing solution for tax advisory and accounting, payroll, etc. So if any of this sounds interesting to you, then don't hesitate to reach out. You can email me at Kristina@woodburnglobal.com. And just remember, we have a whole series of topics that are coming up till the end of June. So next week, we're going to be talking about 6 ways to do business in China without having an office or an entity in China, how to vet your potential business partners, how to register your trademark. We're waiting for one speaker for June 8th. That may be in relation to app development, WeChat mini programs, and then we've got a whole series based on cross-border e-commerce, marketing, etc. That will be super interesting. If you have any colleagues or friends that you feel would be benefit from these types of topics, don't forget to forward our link for registration, and we can send that through to you. So thank you very, very much for joining us. And I look forward to see you again soon. And if you do have any questions, I will stick around, but I will just stop the recording for now. And those of you that are watching it on replay, just remember you can also reach out if you have any questions. Take care and goodbye.